You can access the entire episode now on our website, forbiddenknowledge.news, Rokfin, Rumble, and all podcast platforms. Before we get to your discoveries in Brazil, for the audience that may not be familiar, could you give us a brief overview of the mainstream explanation of who the Templars were and any information that you came across that may not be known to most of the public or even common researchers that have been looking into this?
Right. Okay. Well, that's a pretty big topic. The Templars, as they are recorded history, 1137, they were actually accepted by the Catholic Church, and, the Catholic Church basically gave them their stamp at that point. However, and they were supposedly created to protect pilgrims going into the Holy Land, but if you really look at history and you really do some research, and Freddie Silva's wonderful about this, I'm going to have to plug him because he is absolutely, I really just value his research so much when I was doing this backtracking of my own. And there were only 9 knights. in 1137, there was only 9 men. We had Bernard de Clairvaux, who was basically propelling them and putting them in front of the Catholic Church for their blessing, but he had an agenda, he had a very, very specific agenda, and the Templars were aligned with that agenda, and that agenda was to bring about heaven on earth. That was their agenda. They wanted to bring about heaven on earth. They did a little mini example for us in Portugal, in the country of Portugal. First, they established the country of Portugal. It would not exist today if it hadn't been for the Templars, because they were the ones that went in and conquered, the people that were there, the Islam, the Moors were there. But what they did was a very interesting thing. They invited them to stay and gave them land. So when they finally established the country of Portugal, they took in the Druids, the Cathars, the Jews, the Moors, Islam. Every culture at that time frame was accepted in Portugal. And they still, today, to this day, they still have annual festivals that honor all of these different cultures. It's absolutely beautiful. It's amazing. So they created a sovereign nation that was accepting of all religions and all cultures in the middle of Europe. Well, not in the middle, they're way down at the end, but in the middle of the medieval period, where the Catholic Church had a stronghold over the whole entire continent, in England as well at that point. And they bucked all of that. They protected these people that the church were calling heretics. So here we veer completely from what history has told us, that the Templars were just Crusader knights. They were over there simply to take back Jerusalem for the Catholic Church and protect. 9 knights are going to also protect pilgrims, hundreds of pilgrims going into it just doesn't hold water. It absolutely does not make sense. So my belief in that whole situation, I believe the Templars actually were founded much earlier than 1137, and I had that also corroborated by Timothy Hogan. I believed it was sometime in the early 10th, somewhere in the 11th century. And then I ran across some research that showed that there were an order of knights that were created by Zerubbabel in 600 BC to assist and protect the builders of the Second Temple as it was being built. And now I suspect, through this symbolism that we've discovered, this language of symbols, that many of those same family members later became Templars and created the order officially in 1137. But much earlier, because they actually they founded their organization. A few men that got together initially, they were all Jews, by the way, and they founded that organization in Greece. They were searching for ancient knowledge and ancient wisdom. And they went from there to Istanbul, which was Constantinople at the time, which was the main spot for spiritual belief systems. And, everyone was there. I mean, it was a hub for the mystical orders and ancient esoteric belief systems and the people that were teaching it and carrying it forward into our time. This knowledge, this wisdom has been passed down since the beginning of our creation, basically. No matter who, if you look at the Gnostic Gospels and the archons have been ruling through the demiurge of this planet, that God was actually not a, beneficial person. He was not interested in humans at all. He was interested in controlling humans. He was a false god. So, if you look at it from that perspective, and you believe that the archons have been controlling everything for hundreds of, 100,000 years or more, then you see this, that what the Templars are doing as a really monumental confrontation, directly oppositional to what that whole paradigm is all about. They're all about control. They're all about enslaving mankind, et cetera, et cetera. The Templars are, completely opposite. They want to open up. They want acceptance. They want tolerance for all religions and cultures. Okay, so here we go. And also, I had believed that they had never, that when 1307, when they were arrested, and 1314, when they were later murdered, that our history taught us that was the end of the Templars. Well, I found solid research that that's not true. Some of them went into Scotland, into the area of Temple and where Rosslyn Chapel is, that area in Scotland, and some into the Highlands and hid out in the Highlands. And some of them went into Brazil. Some of them came into North America. They were the only nautical forces on the English continent at that time. They were the first shipbuilders, and they had a nautical college in Peniche that was supported by King Dennis. And I'm leaving for Portugal on March 1st. I'm going back in to study this one particular building and some ancient family records that a friend is going to translate for me. But anyway, and what we're hoping is that we're going to find even more proof of this continuity of the Templars being ancient. Actually, their ancestors having been ancient, they came back into existence during the Middle Ages when things were pretty dark. They were actually pretty dark. And now here again, 700 years later, we have the Templars one more time that are emerging for the public eye, and not only emerging, but a huge part of our global population are really interested in them. So that's no accident.
It's very interesting what you just said. When I compare it to researchers that have a more Christian-based belief system, that believe that the Templars were a part of a malevolent order because of the deities that they communed with, like possibly Baphomet. But what you're saying is that they have seen past the false ideology of the one Christian God, and it's more of a Gnostic view of the world, right? Absolutely.
And, and this is something that, Timothy Hogan and I have discussed, and he believes that he's the Grand Master of the Templars globally. And he's been studying this stuff since he was a child. So I have a great deal of respect for his research. And, I just believed specifically from these symbols and the graffiti that I find, the Templar graffiti and things, I knew they had to be doing initiation processes. I knew that had to be happening. I mean, what I discovered in Brazil is a cave, for God's sake. It's a cave. And there's every reason to believe, according to the symbols that I discovered in there, that it was used for initiation purposes. Very similar to what we see in England and throughout Europe.